Okay, so I realized pretty much at like the very end of the video when I stopped streaming that I actually kind of knew what was going on, which is pretty cool. So I've adjusted the description of the last video to include the little blurb there, and I'm just going to go over it again at the start of this, obviously. So it seems like effectively the difference between these two types of buffs are literally labeled damage resistance and damage reduction. So pretty much all of the sources were at least believed to be the same as damage reduction, but in-game they do actually specify resistance to damage or some other very close wording of that for all of these buffs in the above section. So it actually kind of makes sense that they're specifying it that way because it's a different, or sorry, well, I guess for the sake of highlighting the right itself, this area. So it actually kind of makes sense, I suppose, because these are, well, I mean, a bunch of these have been recently added, so there's the ability to stack a lot of these together, and as a result of making it a resistance, which is basically a addition to your default ability to take damage rather than reducing the amount of damage enemies are dealing to you, it kind of falls into the same relationship as prior videos talking about cooling time versus cooling speed, or reloading time versus reloading speed, or stuff of that ilk, where basically having a additive increase to something that is affecting a dividend, effectively the bottom of a division equation, allows you to basically stack those buffs a lot higher and actually get diminishing returns when you use a bunch of them. Whereas if you stack a bunch of negative multipliers, even if you're stacking them multiplicatively, you can get very, very large effects very quickly. So it can become difficult to balance for that. So Warframe, I'm pretty sure, does everything in the way of damage reduction, just as an example. And I don't actually know if I have the calculation for that. Let's see if I do. Yeah, I don't even have it on the quick list. Let's see, I've poked around with damage reduction formula for there a bit, and I know they have one on the wiki website, but it is, I'm not going to say unwieldy, but it's like, it uses a lot of different references, whereas I'm just asking about a couple here. So let's see, yeah, I think most of this is just for how abilities work. So yeah, I don't think I actually go over the damage resistance formula at all here, which is somewhat unfortunate. Would have been a good reference, because I know they use a similar system, and I know that I have a couple of builds that are actually focused on, this is just 2D, this isn't even a list of all my builds, but are looking at minimizing the amount of damage taken in certain contexts. So for instance with Hildron, or I know another one is not even listed here, Titania. Yeah. Well, in any case, I know I've been somewhat familiar with this system via other ones. So there's a bunch of different things you can do to prevent things from getting overpowered. Basically having very small buffs, and then stacking them multiplicatively, which is what I imagine they're doing for damage reduction, prevents you from like hitting that 100% damage reduction or even the 99% damage reduction. But in Warframe, because you're primarily fighting bots, you can have 1% damage taken or 0.00001% damage taken, and for the most part it doesn't actually matter, because normally you have other concerns as far as like actually completing objectives, or you know, being able to actually kill the enemies fast enough, stuff like that. Whereas on here, obviously it's primarily PvP, and every single part you shoot off of an enemy build is going to affect their overall durability, whereas Warframe is just binary. You're either alive with X amount of health left out of Y amount of max health and shield and whatever other death cheat options you have, but you're either living or dead there, where here you can be crippled along the way a lot more easily. So that's why I think most of these are probably classified instead as damage resistances. The only one that is a damage reduction module explicitly listing so, I suppose, would be the Omamori, because it says, even in its description, that it absorbs up to half of the damage. But The other ones aren't really explicitly listed. It's just part of the innate stats where they have X amount of blank resistance, which funny enough is listed as damage resistance again, I believe, technically. Because it'll be listed as a feature. When you hover over it, the feature is resistance to bullet damage 50%, explosion damage 50%, contact damage 50%, and fire damage 50%. Technically it's thermal and contact damage, but whatever. For the Bastion, for instance. So it even specifies its resistance there, but it does actually appear to be damage reduction in those cases. So any of the perk stuff, though, does specify damage resistance, so it's a different calculation. It kind of makes sense. So what the point of this is, other than me getting pinged a bunch. Okay, other people talking to one another. Gaudy. But as far as how I expect these would stack together as a result, I imagine it's going to be multiplicative for damage reduction. I don't see any other way you could possibly do it, because if you're treating the formula as your damage taken is equal to damage given times 1 minus the culmination of damage reduction you have, if you hit a value of 100% or higher, then you don't take any damage. And obviously they don't want to give us, you know, nigh invincibility. So I suspect that they're probably just going to have these multiply together, if at all, doing anything. So it should be a fairly easy calculation to do, because I can just look at the amount of damage a Bastion with Omamori, or a Tusk with Omamori, or a Cerberus with Omamori do, and I imagine it's going to be exactly halfway in between this value and 100%, which is to say I imagine it'll be 75% damage reduction for the Bastion, and then 80 or whatever, I don't even know what halfway is. Isn't it 87.5? Yeah. % damage reduction for the Tusk and the Cerberus, with of course the limitation of these lasting. Likewise, I imagine that the damage resistance stacking is going to be additive, because the formula is already pretty nice and neat where it's 1 plus the amount of damage resistance you have. I don't see why they wouldn't just have these all be additive. So instead of having a 30% damage resistance increase, you'll have 30 plus, say, another 30, so 60% damage increase. Theoretically, they could be doing it multiplicatively or some other way. I'm not 100% sure, but the hope is that it's pretty much just straightforward. Then that way we can look at smashing these two calculations together. So what that would actually be looking like is just any of the other calculations where you've smashed speed and time together, for instance, where it would just be H, so the amount of damage taken is equal to the base damage, which in this case is 60, times 1 minus the damage reduction, divided by 1 plus the damage resistance. That's my suspicion, and I'm really, really, really hoping it's that nice and easy, but it might very well not be. So then once I have those figured out, then we can also relate their effectiveness of them to things like the durability bonus, because for instance you can have damage reduction, or sorry, rather damage resistance on a cabin like the cohort with damage resistance, but also because damage reduction is a direct comparison and goes 1-to-1 ratio, we could look at maybe wanting to run the Bastion with a damage resistance upgrade, and maybe that ends up being more tanky than a cohort cabin with durability or something. I don't know. That's probably going to be another video, because it's probably going to get pretty calculation intensive, just like with even just using, like, determining the this is what I want. Determining the amount of movement parts you need for something. When you have a few variables, they can very quickly balloon the amount of results. So like all of this, for instance, is useful data, and I actually used it in the other video, but it's pretty daunting to look at just to begin with, and only one single value is going to be relevant to any one singular situation. It's just that you're going to have quite a few different factors that are going to play into it. So I'm really, really hoping that this is going to be, I guess for that sake, we should probably also rename this to like damage mitigation or something, to refer to both of these types technically. Again, of course, all three. And then likewise, what we're actually doing this for is to determine the amount of effective health we can get out of some sort of effect, which is kind of the point of, you know, the Operation Armour theme. So to that end, the bonuses given by the cabin durability ones are very nice and easy, especially because there's only 2 factors and we know they stack multiplicatively. So that's easy enough. We know that they give us a 10% multiplicative bonus to our cabin durability, or 5%, or both of them together, 15.5%, because the bonuses are multiplicative. That one's easy enough. Likewise, I think it's fair to say that we kind of know the effective health given by damage resistance. I'm not 100% sure of the calculation for that, so I am also just going to get rid of these values, because we now know that these values match that damage. But in a sense, because the damage resistance calculation is basically saying that, you know, like that equation there is basically saying that we have 100% damage resistance by default. So it's not saying we resist 100% of damage, but we take 1 times the amount of damage that we would normally take. If we increase our resistance by 30%, then it's, you know, 1.3 times the damage resistance, so we take 23% less damage, etc. So I believe the math actually works out that your end durability ends up being effectively multiplied by that amount. So I'm going to see if I can't hash out that calculation fairly quick. Likewise, what that means is we can calculate it for damage reduction, and then we can kind of talk about the 2 things not only equivalently to each other, but equivalently to cabin durability. Because, for instance, we know the approximate actual % damage reduction of these damage resistance values based off of what's calculated, but we can't really like talk about these values in relation to these, because it's an increase as opposed to a decrease. And once we have the effective, you know, health increase, which I imagine is going to be equivalent to these values over here, then we can also look at the difference between the damage reduction. I imagine it's going to still end up being a very same result, where if you want 50% damage reduction more so than you want 50% damage resistance, just because of how the calculations work. But at least, like I said, it'll be more direct across to compare, because right now we basically did the calculation one way, which is damage resistance into damage reduction. Now we just got to do it the other way, which is damage reduction into damage resistance. So as far as the actual calculation of that, I suppose we could theoretically reverse this calculation, but I'm not actually sure if that would give us any useful information, because really what we want to know is for 100 points of health, how much does any effect give. So I'm going to say this is effective whole multiplier, I suppose. So these ones are easy enough where it's the inverse of the damage reduction, right? If you're going to decrease the amount of damage taken by 50%, you're going to increase the effective amount of damage they can take by the inverse of that. So we can say that it's going to be, our effective health multiplier is going to be 1 divided by whatever our damage percent reduction is, which is also equivalent to this initial value over here. So we're going to have a 200% health effect for that one. That is obviously not the calculation we want, because this should be 400%, so it's not going to be that. I suppose it would, actually be 1 divided by 1 minus that value, which is going to be the same, because it's 200% either way, because instead of calculating the amount of reduction, we're looking at the amount remaining for this calculation. And in a sense, this is just a simplification of this calculation as well, where we're saying what is this multiplier as a result of the 1 minus c in brackets on the total damage. We're not actually concerned about the actual damage amount, as long as it applies to the conditional of the correct energy type and the correct location, and it's not over threshold in the case of Omamori, which has its threshold of, half, up to 300 damage, then we're going to have this much of a health multiplier on it. So yeah, 200%, 400%, 400%, 200%. So likewise, if we were to hypothetically stack these values together, the hope is that they would make sense in that regard as well. So again, if you just additively added the reductions, then you're just going to be getting 100% damage resistance, or 125% damage, sorry, not resistance, because we are now specifying that as another term. We would have 100% damage reduction, which means you take no damage, or if you added the Omamori to the Tusker Cerberus, you would have 125% damage reduction, which would mean under most systems you actually heal by 25% of the damage dealt. So we obviously know that that's not the case, but that's good information to have. Likewise, we can sort of derive this up here for the other ones. And lo and fucking behold, when you take the inverse of these values, you are getting exactly the amount of the effect to begin with. So in a sense, I suppose it's reasonable to say that the effect percents aren't really the same because they're talking about two different things. It's almost like we have our damage resistance effect, which is affecting our effective health multiplier directly, and we have our damage reduction effects, which is affecting it indirectly as a result of having or quartering the damage. So hopefully that all makes sense and isn't me talking out of my ass, because I feel like this makes sense. It's also worth noting that obviously these values here are like very slightly wrong from what they should be, which is the like 21% or the 10%. And I imagine that's just a result of the rounding, because it wasn't perfectly 50 damage. It was rounded to 50 damage. It wasn't perfectly 55 damage. It was rounded to 55. So what I'm going to do is make this calculation based off of the original value rather than the calculated value, just for the sake of consistency. So I'll say this is divided by not C3, whoops, C8. Likewise for those. Whereas this is going to be equal to, again, just that bottom value of the 1 plus effectively, where it's going to be equal to the 1 plus that value. Which again, with rounding makes sense that the 10 and the 21 would be slightly different. So yeah, this should all make sense and thus also be pretty logical, hopefully, as to why we can like smash these equations together. It's also interesting, though, it's kind of funny because the effective health multiplier being the inverse of the percent reduction means that the calculation is also inversed, right? Because instead of divided by 1 plus c, it's equal to 1 plus c. Instead of times 1 minus c, it's divided by 1 minus c. So yeah, effectively these two values are inverse of one another, I suppose. In fact, they probably should be. Not like that, though. Well, maybe. I just don't understand the math. Oh. Oops. Oh, you're killing me. Yeah, that's the inverse of that. So that should be the inverse of that, right? Goes to show what I know, I guess. Oh, wrong cell. J7. And it doesn't end up working out even. Great. Okay, so I don't know why that is. Oh, probably because it's the remainder again, right? Because otherwise then you'd have this be the dumb value again. Excellent. Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, effectively the effective health multiplier is going to be the inverse of damage, percent damage reduction, which is going to be equivalent to the remainder of the percent damage taken instead. So that makes sense. Right, you have a quarter of the damage remaining, you have 4 times the damage of that you can take. That makes sense. Great. So now what do we want to do with this? We're going to see how they stack. Like I said, I suspect it's additively for this, and I suspect it's multiplicatively for this. It should be really, really easy to find out though, so let's do some testing. So yeah, first up I guess is just Bastion with Omamori. Xbox, please. Oh, and the game froze again. Yeah, I don't know, it keeps doing that. Oh, it moved for a second. I have a feeling the Xbox app is fucking stuff up. Let's try just disconnecting and reconnecting this and seeing if my controller plays. Oh, and my controller plays nice all of a sudden. Okay, so it's some sort of focus issue. Now, to be fair, I did go over this in like a couple of videos ago, but they basically changed from the Xbox console companion to the Xbox app for like streaming functionality with no warning whatsoever. So it doesn't surprise me that there's probably some bugs as a result. Anyway, so I'm gonna make my super shitty vehicle again. Bastion is a long boy though, which does complicate things a little bit. Could have 2 frames down instead of just one. Monstrous. Okay, and we're gonna actually raise you off the ground, I believe, because the wheels should be doing that anyway. I want to just move this one more, so that there's no risk of these touching the harvester. This is also not how you build a vehicle, for what it's worth. This is certainly not a tutorial on that. Okay, it should be good. Take off the co-driver, and then I'm just gonna sanity check myself real quick. This should be 30 damage per tick still. That shouldn't have changed. I shouldn't have recorded the wrong value or anything. It should still be the same. Alright. Grind on perfect 30. So in theory, if my understanding of the system is correct, then it should be equal to 15 with an Omamori up till the 300% or the 300 damage threshold is reached, and then the Omamori blows up and that takes full damage, whatever. Beep, beep. It's lovely. This thing backs up so slowly I almost don't even need to prevent like a collision in order for the damage to value to go up. Okay, well, it obviously had connection issues again, but it is at least 15, as can be seen on the pause screen there, and also as I continue to grind against it. Then afterwards it's 45, and then 30, 30, 30, 30, and so the full damage value afterwards, as well as, you know, hurting the Omamori. So I imagine the 45 was probably just from the ticks counting differently once we got booped again by the explosion of the Omamori. So that makes sense. That's good. That's real good. That sparks joy. So that basically like rubber stamps it being, yes, it's multiplicative, which is beautiful. So that means for any two of these effects together, their effects are going to, for the damage, the percent damage reduction at least, are going to be multiplicative. So your full calculation would be where am I doing this calculation? That's this one, but reorganizes in an H equals to C. Yeah, great. Okay, so I feel like this is formatted somewhat wrong. Because we aren't actually doing the calculation here, we're just recording the results. So we didn't actually, I mean, like the math checks out for the calculation working as shown here. But we basically were like, what if we took a calculation that used the C column and then we just input the value and then we did a calculation off of that in reverse, which is just equivalent to, you know, the first column in the case of this being a damage reduction. So that's a little redundant, but I guess what we could look at is having our calculation here being, instead of having this column be effect percentage, we could just say damage reduction percent and then add another column to the right which actually has these values, which is effectively just saying damage resistance is a, you know, effective health multiplier. But I'm not going to worry about that too much because this is all still part of the spreadsheet. Maybe I'll pretty it up for the like image, the thumbnail again. But yeah, this is good. So I'm going to try it on the Tusk and the Cerberus, and I guess I can also check and see if it is the cabin for both of those again. It's easy enough, especially with Omnis. So I'm going to do that. That. Oh, silly Cerberus with your little lip. Not being the same length as Sebastian. How could you, monsters? Okay, so I'm gonna have that, and then I'm gonna have, what am I gonna have? I want to hit it from the side just for the sake of knowing if it works that way. So what I'm actually gonna do is widen this like a lot. So that the wheels are out of the way. What a monstrous creation. Except that's not going to work in this case, is it? Because then it's going to be kind of hard for me to fit this front into the side. So how do I hit this thing from the side? I guess just have the cabin in front of the wheels. But then I have to have this area. Oh my god. What am I doing wrong here? Need to have the front extend further than the width between. Yeah, okay, so I don't actually need to throw this out any further, do I? I just need them to be more out of the way. Which I guess requires me to basically expand or extend the build, because I can't really get them any further away from the front of the vehicle. Okay, so I will make a itty bitty frame connection point here. And then I will have the harvester sticking out a bit, which requires me to have the wheels sticking out a bit. Maybe something like that. Oh, that's right, these things are wide. Okay, so maybe that if it plays nice. Beautiful. And then hopefully being able to hit the cabin there on the side without hitting those frames, although I will admit I am skeptical. So let's do... Heck, we can even make it cockeyed, can't we? Beautiful, just as the devs intended. The perfect crossout machine. Okay, so we got that, and it's being boosted by the Armour. Great. So now we can go and we can grind on it and see if it plays nice from this side. So it should be dealing the like 87.5, so whatever I guess half of 15 is, so it should be like 8.7 and then like flickering in between that on the damage ticks. No way. Okay, well, I kind of made it sound like I knew what I was doing and then proved that to not be the case. But yeah, let me get rid of the side here that doesn't have a frame peeking out underneath of it. Maybe a little bit faster if I get both harvesters touching it. Okay, so now we touch the cabin. 8, aim. So I guess it's just rounding then, isn't it? Okay, well, it's definitely anywhere on the cabin though. That's interesting. So I guess you could go boot people with like the back or side of the cabin rather than worrying about hitting it explicitly from the front. That's kind of cool, I guess. And just for the sake of showing it here, it's going to be 8 again. Yeah. Okay, so these work the way we expect them to. That's good. I feel like I need another matrix or something. Oh boy, we have the Bastion, and then we have the Armour, and and that's going to be giving 50% damage resist, 50% damage resist. I guess technically we should do it this way. X, look up that value, that reference, and return the damage reduction. What are you angry about? Right, it's the wrong size. Yeah, we can have the full size one. So we got that there, and then we got that there, and then we suspect the calculation is going to be equal to, this is damage. No, reduction. Nice. Item total. So we're suspecting that they're multiplicative, which they should be, and the initial damage is, I don't even know where to put the initial damage is 60, whatever. So, I mean, we already know the answer is 8 because we already got that. But for the calculating of that, it should be equal to this calculation again. So we're going to take the base damage, which is 60, multiplied by 1 minus however these boosts stack together. And in this case, I'm pretty confident with saying that it's just multiplicative. Which, nope. What am I doing wrong here? 1 minus... What? This isn't good. It intuitively makes sense. So my calculation is more likely to be wrong, I suppose. Oh, I guess they wouldn't be multiplied together, would they? They'd be 1 times that times... What? No, because that'd just be... Multiplied by 1 doesn't do anything. Oh my goodness. So... What are they doing? What am I doing? 1 minus total damage reduction. Total damage reduction in this case is going to be... It's not going to be 100% because that wouldn't make any sense. So I guess it'd be multiplied by the base, wouldn't it? So it'd be 1 minus that plus that times the base damage, I think. No, it's definitely not that. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Thinking, shouldn't it be the remainder of these? But the remainder is just still the same number in this case. So it's 50%. But it's... I mean, 50% times 50% is 25%. And that's what we want. We want 25%. But we want the... Okay, screw that equation. It's equal to 60 times... And then we know the end value is 25%. So I guess it's... 1 minus, and then why are these added multiply? What? Because it'd be 75%, right? If we just input the values, then we get the result we know that we got. And then likewise, if you make this instead of the bash and you make this the tusk, 75% turns into, well, it doesn't actually update, but that calculation would be otherwise. So let's do Cerberus. Definitely cabin. So is that 125%? But it's not 125% because they don't add additively. So is it 1 minus 25% times 50%? Doesn't make any sense because that'd be 12.5%. That'd give us the inverse, wouldn't it? We're in for 12.5%, which is what that inverse is. So, okay, let's just do it this way. We're gonna break it down. So we've got the product of these two multiplied together. That doesn't actually give us anything useful, does it? Because we want the inverse, so we want one product of 1 minus that and 1 minus that, which is 12.5%, and then we do our initial damage value times the product. Why is it putting in percent? Just a number, bro. 7.5 damage. Nice. And then we round the damage to 0 digits just like they did, which gives us 8. I say round to 0 and then it gives me a fucking decimal point anyway. Okay, great. So that makes sense. Then we do that and then we say, hey, it's the Bastion, then it gives us what? How much? 15. Cool. So that's how the calculation works together. So there's probably a better way to do it, but so it's whatever the resulting value is rather than, yeah, so it's, well, if we go strip away the fanciness, then it's 60 times 1 minus 75% times, at that point I don't even need, the order doesn't matter, does it? Times 1 minus 50%, and that's equal to 60 times 25% times 50%. It's equal to 60 times, oops, 7.5, yeah, okay. So it's just I wasn't doing the inverse. I was doing the, I don't know what I was calculating, wasn't obviously the right one. Okay, so those work together, yes, and they definitely work multiplicatively because they're literally multiplying those values together, the 25% and the 50%. Okay, so that's good. Cool, and it's definitely not going to get any more confusing when we do the damage resistance calculation, right? Right, so I'm just gonna heat this down here, and instead of damage reduction, we're gonna have our effective health multiplier, or whatever you want to refer to the effect of the damage resistance, increased damage resistance, I don't know. And then we're gonna make this, oh, that's funny, it copied without the, oh, because I didn't know the calculation, great, excellent. So we are going to be looking at, I still want those values actually, but we want them for the K value. So if we look at the, what would be these? Probably the averter. That one's easy, not you, because you can't go with the memory. Let's just say the Ermac, I guess. So the calculation for that is, I don't know what you're getting upset about. The Ermac is down level 3, of course. Cool, so the calculation is going to be different. So I'm thinking I guess it's not 1 plus, is it? It's just literally the value there. So effective health multiplier, so that doubles. We almost want the additive value of that though, not the multiplicative one, don't we? Does that change the formula at all? What a great question for me. This would just be the effective health increase, and then that would just be whatever the base value is. Oh, you're killing me. Okay. And then for here, it would be the inverse of that still, isn't it? But the effective increase is going to be, would be 100% for 50%. Would be 300% for that. So it's, no, what give us 300% for that? Because it's just that minus 100%, isn't it? I think that's how that works. Maybe, I guess we'll find out. And then the effective, I'm assuming it's going to be together, so I'm assuming it's going to be effective health increase of 51%, you know. So yeah, I guess again these are dealing with two different values, but if we were to take the effective health increase, maybe we just take the, no, probably shouldn't take the damage reduction. Oh man, math is hard. Okay. This value should be correct though, because that's what the calculated one was, right? 46. So it should be equal to 60 divided by 1 plus that. 0, there we go. So that's how the actual calculation, that's smart. We should have the actual calculation match what we got in game. So 60 times, oops. 1 minus that, we got a value of 30, that's great. So we have those calculations. Suppose we could just smash these two together, couldn't we? Because they're effectively the same. Damage reduction. Effective health increase. And I'm just going to shade these so that we know that they are calculated and not actually the values they give us. And we're going to say the percent reduction, we're just going to move, I guess this is now H plus D is equal to 1 minus C still. And we have our, yeah, whatever. And we have these there. So now we don't need these because the other remaining values are just the default values we have. Oh, I did not like that, did it? Because the references are hard, whatever. I still need to find a way to relate these two things though directly so that we can actually have this calculation be in one location, because otherwise it's going to be kind of upsetty. Whatever. Okay, it looks through that and it looks for the damage reduction, which is in column C. So that is that, that's that, that's that, this is effective health, oops, increase instead, and it's going to be looking at the effective health increase. and that is good. So then the question is how we relate these to the damage reduction to the effective health, because the effective health is calculated, I'm suspecting, at 51%, but the question is going to be what the number actually turns out to be. So I suppose in theory it would be whatever your durability is times 1.5%, and then 150% times 1.5, and then just the inverse of that, right? But let's test that first. So we can do that again pretty easily when we're actually testing this. So averter is 30%, and the Ermac, use hook. Oh good, if I don't click stay connected it doesn't kill my controls maybe. Whack, okay. So I have my Omamori in the wrong spot. Have my Ermac. Not worried about hitting it from the side anymore. So we can go back to but I want to just backtrack to where it was. Oh, because I didn't even... whatever, good enough. I'm gonna stick out its nose a little bit so their things don't get hit. That, boom, boom, and the averter. Okay, so let's see what the damage is on that without Billy, even though they shouldn't be a factor here. So very content with it being 40. And if we calculate that as, I guess this is the wrong column for this value to be in, but whatever. If we calculate the damage formula with damage resistance, assuming it stacks, then we can hopefully have calculation work. So let's see, our damage is equal to the base damage, and then I'm assuming they're multiplicative, but plus that. No, it really doesn't like that. Okay, so let's just do, what is it, K26 plus K27, and then we hopefully get 40 as a result. One rounded, nice. Excellent, so those values are great. So that's good to know that the not you. Where do I want this? It's not total at all, is it? It's like a different quantity. It's like, what's the damage after taking into account both the damage reduction and effective health increase, which is the important one because we want to figure out what happens when we use both of these boosts together. No, don't do that. also don't know why you're underlined, but okay. Okay. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to relate the damage reductions because you can't really subtotal them, can you? Because they're not additive. I guess you still can, just be a subtotal multiplicative. It's a subtotal additive. Equals that times that, but it's actually going to be inverse. Or 1 minus that plus 1 minus that. Which is our 12.5%, lovely. And then our base damage is 60. So that makes sense, right? 60 times the product. This looks dumb. I don't know. I'm gonna have to reformat this. Whatever. Important part is that 60 times 12 times 12.5% when rounded is 8, so that's good. Great. So we have that, we have these, it's great. So I guess we can kind of smash them together, can't we? Hopefully. Hopefully it should just be 60 times the product of this. And then divided by that. I'm hoping. I'm really hoping. So the base damage of 60. If we have an item and it has X damage reduction, X damage resistance. So we have an item and we're going to look up that value there and get that. Oops. I actually want to search for the item and return this, but we won't return both. We just return the actual one because these values are related, I suppose. So us having them like this, where we have both values, means that I guess you could use one column or the other, but I'm just going to keep both for the sake of making this. So got the bastion, that'll be 8% for both. And then our calculation should be, this is multiplicative, so in theory if you had a bunch of different values, so again let's do not a bastion but our Armour. Rip. Oh no, it is 50%, I was wondering why it was different, great. Okay, so get that, then in theory our subtotal for percent damage reduction. Oh, this is just the same calculation twice, just inversed, isn't it? Because if I do the 23% that the averter is effectively equivalent to, and if I do the 17% that the Ermac is effectively equivalent to, then I should be getting the same result, shouldn't I? So I might be doing some extra work at the moment I really don't need to be doing. Alright, because that times 60 should be about 40, but with some rounding schisms. Yeah. Okay, so I actually don't really even need both of these, do I? It's just easier, I think, to have the gray cells for reference, but not actually use them in the calculations. because obviously they're going to affect stuff. But how would I tell it to only grab the one? Probably by just doing something I hate doing that Google does better. But I don't think there's really a better way to do it at the moment, so let's just do that. Oops. So this is equal to effective health increase, but actually spelled properly. Great, and we could say oh, I'd almost need to use a filter function for this one there, because we want it to match based off of two different things. Let's see, filter that to include where, oh, this is almost too much work. Okay, would be the easiest way to do this that doesn't make me lose my sanity then. Whatever, I'm just gonna do this a shitty way to begin with. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna look up the bastion. And here. And return the damage reduction. And then we're going to, oops, do that here, and we're going to look for same item, but we're going to be looking in D for the damage resistance. And I'm just going to delete this, whatever. X lookup, same thing, value, but we're going to be looking it up in the damage resistance section for the damage resistance value. It's going to get angry because there's no answer. So I'm just going to say if error is, then I'm just going to say nothing. Hopefully that doesn't get angry with the calculations. Great. That's what we're going to do. So we have the, shut up. What are you angry about? Oh, whoops, I didn't lock those values. That do it. You got me. You got me. You were right. Okie dokie. So now we have an Omamori, and then let's just keep it easy. Let's just have 2 values, shall we? So we're gonna have a Bastion and we're gonna have an Averter. Great. So we are gonna have our damage reduction product, and we're gonna have our damage resistance sum, and this is going to be equal to the sum of all these values, and this is going to be equal to the product. Oh, they got angry about stuff. Whoopsie. Guess I should have also kept the thing where I did the multiple sections there. Okay, what are you angry about? You're looking for... Alright, fixed references, right? Yeah. It's not going to be there, is it? Because it's going to be in G2 to G4. Whatever. I guess I could just do the entire section, couldn't I? G2 to G11. C2 to C11. Great. Fix that. Great. So the D-res product is going to be the 1 minus. I don't even know how to do that automatically, because it would be product of some, I don't know, what's the, well, this would be a product of all of those, but it wouldn't be all of those. It would be the product of whatever the difference. Can I do a mass? No, of course not. Can I do the opposite of a sum? No. Turns the sum of the product. No, I want a product sum almost. Yeah. So I must want this inversed anyway to begin with. To have it be the 1 minus 50% rather than being the 50%, although at least for that calculation it's literally the same value. But it becomes different obviously when we do Tusker Cerberus. Whatever. I'm just gonna make this easy on myself. So that, and then the calculation is going to be, in theory, the base damage times the product divided by the sum. There's no way the damage value is going up though, so that should be 30 divided by, I guess, 1 plus. That would make more sense. $23 damage, that's what we're hoping for. Alright, game. See what you got for me. Oh my god, amazing. Huzzah! Excellent. No, do not queue in a PvP with that. My god. Alright. So that's good. That's good. So once I figure out what this formula actually is, then yeah, then we could apply a bunch of different buffs to it for, you know, the funsies. So yeah, I mean, the most complex one you could probably do is the Bastion with an Omamori Grizzly and the cabin upgrade. Because a lot of these other ones kind of conflict as far as, you know, being in the same slot with the cohort, the call, the Ermac, Bastion, Tusk, Cerberus, the Omamori, and the Averter conflict. But the co-driver and the cabin upgrade do not. So I guess what I could also do is cry, because I actually do have a durability upgrade on the cohort. But if I had a damage resistance one, it'd be a little bit easier to test that. Let's see, what else could I do? Do I have, what do I even have it on? I don't think I have it on any of the cabins that I'd actually test for this. Because my Bastion is mass. Tusk and Cerberus unupgraded, Ermac unupgraded, and then the cohort is durability, and the call is also unupgraded. Okay, well, I guess this is pretty much as complex as I can get with the testing. I mean, I can check the Omamori with one of the other cabins, but it should just be the same thing. Very interested to see if any of the calculations change as a result of having multiples of these, but without like somebody else playing cohort and then giving me the stuff. Could be kind of hard to check. Well, I suppose let's see, I could do Grizzly at least. And then I could run, yeah, why not an Omamori instead? And then I don't really want to run the cohort, but let's try the Ermac level 3. And we do those all together. Should be 20 damage, it says. Ermac, Omamori, Grizzly. Lol. Well, I'm going to be testing it even if it is Angie. Because, like, I'm still playing it, bro. Alright, let's see what damage values we get. 33, 28, 28, 26, 25, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. Which is obviously with both of the perks active, then it hops up to 25 for a bit. And then it goes back down, yeah. Okay, great. So what do I say? 20? Beautiful. Okay, so I know the calculation. That's good. That's very good. So the damage is equal to base damage times the product of, I don't even know what the term is, like all of those minus, is there a, yeah. Let's see, let's ask Google. Apply a subtraction to multiple cells. Excel. Type the matrix formula. What? They're add and subtract numbers, Microsoft support. This is exactly what I need. Probably. Oh, it's just like type. A plus B. Nice. Okay. Let's see. No, what am I asking for? It's like, I feel like this has to exist. The like, but I don't know. 1 minus damage reduction. A 1 minus red B ATC divided by 1 plus sum of damage resistances. Cool, so another calculation. So we can actually have another stream focusing on what that actually hopefully means, and I can maybe clean up whatever this 1 minus times 1 minus thing ends up being. So that's good. Yeah.